Before I call the cops, security, get that little girl out of here. All of the executives in suits stopped to witness the uncomfortable situation as the voice reverberated through the marble corridor of the 50-story tower. 2 security guards walked up to the golden reception desk where David Santos, just 22, remained still. Her hands quivered a little, not out of fear, but out of a feeling he had been battling for months to control. To get there, the young man had taken a bus across 3 states, slept in shelters, and saved every cent for 6 months. David stated calmly, "Please, I just need 5 minutes with Mr. Richardson." In contrast to the commotion all around her, tycoon Daniel Richardson, the owner of a $8 billion real estate business, came down the Italian marble steps like a king disturbed by a subject and said, "It's about my sister." His Italian shoes gleamed as brilliantly as the disdain in his eyes. And his outfit was more expensive than David's family's yearly salary. With a pause a few feet away, Richardson whispered, "Listen carefully," as though David were infectious. After taking a big breath, David took a crumpled picture of an 8-year-old girl smiling in a hospital bed out of his pocket and said, "I don't know what kind of scam you're trying to pull, but it won't work here. My company doesn't give handouts. My sister Sophia has spent the last 3 months in the hospital, sir. According to the doctor, she requires experimental surgery, which will cost $200,000. I'm not here to plead." Oh no. Several colleagues shared Richardson's uncomfortable laughter as he laughed dismissively. "What is this then?" Alone, with his gaze fixated on the billionaires, David responded, "It's a job offer. I've done some study on her business. I think you might be interested in what I've learned about her operations in underprivileged areas." For a moment, Richardson's smug grin wavered. The young man's tone, calm and decisive, disturbed him in some way. "What are you discussing?" David gave a small smile, not in a meek manner, but rather with the assurance of someone who understood exactly where he was taking things. "Richardson, Mr. Ever ponder why her building projects in underprivileged areas consistently go 40% over budget and 2 years behind schedule." The hall fell into a deafening hush. Although Richardson was shivering, he made an effort to remain calm. "I'll have you arrested for trespassing after 30 seconds. Then," David remarked, her confidence increasing with each sentence, "I'll get right to the point. I have 5 years of construction experience. In the southern area, I know every contractor, inspector, and local politician, and I know exactly who is embezzling millions from his office and social projects. This has to be worth it." David clutched his sister's picture as they made their way to the private elevator. Richardson was unaware that the 6 months of study had covered more ground than merely corporate corruption. In addition to saving Sophia, David had found a way to drastically change the lives of hundreds of families that society had forgotten. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. If you're curious about how a young man from the suburbs learned about her own company that a billionaire didn't, what was going to happen in that office would not only alter 2 lives, but also expose a corrupt network that no one could have predicted existed. Richardson poured himself a $1,000 bottle of scotch in the top-floor office, worth $50 million, without even offering David water. As the millionaire took a seat in her Italian leather recliner, the young man continued to stand in front of the mahogany desk. "So smart, kid," remarked Richardson scornfully. David pulled an ancient cell phone from his pocket and set it on the table. "Impress me. What kind of corruption do you think you've uncovered in my company?" he asked. While working on one of his humanitarian projects, the Sunset Valley housing complex, 3 weeks ago, I heard Chief Engineer Thomas Mitchell and Councilman James Walsh have an intriguing chat. With his whiskey swirling in his glass, Richardson interrupted. "Mitchell has been one of my best employees for 15 years. Additionally, Walsh acknowledges our excellence and endorses our efforts." Superiority. David gave a sour smile. "Richardson, Mr. 40% of the building materials are being diverted. Superior cement turns into ordinary cement. Cheap iron is made from steel rebar. His private construction projects immediately benefit from the disparity. In 5 years, houses that should endure 50 years will begin to crumble." Because two wealthy men chose to become even wealthier, children will live in buildings that have been condemned. The billionaire rose suddenly, her face flushed with rage. Listen, young one. You enter my business, accuse my staff of stealing, and then you have the gall to give me a lecture. David responded, Security, Mr. Richardson, his tone even more composed, despite the fury. On average, his business loses $2.5 million for each project as a result of these thefts. That's more than $100 million that went directly into her pocket in just 5 years. Richardson paused, his hand resting on the receiver. The figures were startlingly close to her own financial forecasts. With losses he ascribed to unforeseen expenses and market fluctuations. You have 3 minutes to prove this or you're out of here in handcuffs, he yelled. However, there was a loss of conviction in his voice. David inhaled deeply as he considered Sophia in the hospital, battling leukemia that was draining her energy every day while she was hooked up to tubes. The family's savings were depleted after 3 months in the hospital. His father was a night security guard who worked 18 hours a day. Early in the morning, his mother cleaned offices. Even yet, half of the experimental treatment was out of their price range. For the first time, David's voice wavered as he said, Sir, my sister is 8 years old and dying. Richardson examined the young man's face for indications of deceit or manipulation. I could have taken this information to your competitors, to the media, or to the public prosecutor's office. But I came to you because I believe there are still people who do the right thing when they know the truth. He was gravely troubled by the calm, desperate determination he discovered. He sat back down and added, even if his accusations had some basis in fact, how would it change anything? I want to give you $200,000. You have some wild corruption narrative. I'm not interested in a donation, David said firmly. I'd like to work. By getting rid of the kickbacks, I can reduce the expenses of each project by 20%. I just asked for what is necessary to save my sister in exchange. Richardson chuckled once more, but this time there was more incredulity than cruelty. As a construction worker, you believe you can execute tasks that my managers and engineers can't. These are the communities where I grew up. Mr. Richardson. Every family that will reside in those shoddy homes is one that I know. I live on the side of the forgotten, not the profiteers. Therefore, I know exactly where every dime is being stolen. Just as the billionaire opened his mouth to reply, his aide came in without knocking. I apologize for interrupting, but we have a dilemma, Mr. Richardson. The Sunset Valley Initiative. The quality of the materials is the subject of rumors in the media. Marcus Silva, a journalist, is posing queries regarding anomalies. In that instant, Richardson knew he had misjudged this young man entirely. He had come here for reasons other than desperation. It was a plan. David had shown that he knew exactly how to put pressure in the right place at the right time. While everyone else in the company saw him as simply another begging man from the periphery, every statement was made with that unwavering composure. Every fact was given at the precise moment, and every gesture was planned for maximum effect. All of this came from someone who had painstakingly planned this meeting for months, foreseeing every response, every protest, and every effort to undermine her. Richardson waved his helper away impatiently and stared at David as intently as a predator examining its victim. Marcus Silva is a journalist that you are familiar with. I don't personally know him, David said coolly. However, I am aware that he has spent the last 6 months looking into anomalies in housing developments. He has been receiving pretty accurate information from an unnamed source. A shiver went down the billionaire's spine. I stated I came here with a job offer, not threats, Mr. Richardson. I didn't say I came alone in this dispute, but David maintained a polite tone while her voice had a new strength. Richardson hit the intercom button. Mitchell, please bring the Sunset Valley project reports to my office right away. David pulled a second cell phone from his pocket while they waited. Compared to the original, this one is far more modern. Could I show you something you would find interesting, sir? Clearly visible on the screen was a video footage showing Councilman Walsh handing Thomas Mitchell an envelope containing cash. In a parking lot, for a remote recording, the image quality was surprisingly good. "Where did you purchase this?" Richardson inquired, the haughtiness gone from her voice. "I have 5 years of construction experience, but I also attend community college to study civil engineering at night," David added. Technology used for security and monitoring on building sites was one of the topics that most intrigued me. Richardson saw that he had misjudged this young man. He was more than a desperate worker. David had prepared for this encounter in a meticulous manner. "Do you have a lot of these recordings?" Trying not to lose his cool, he asked. "Enough to record a 3-year-old pattern of behavior," David said. "I'm not here to ruin her business, though, as I mentioned, to save it, I'm here." Just then, Mitchell came into the office with a heavy briefcase. When he spotted David, the chief engineer, a stout 50-year-old guy with graying hair, halted suddenly. "Why is this worker in Mr. Richardson's office?" With ill-concealed contempt, Mitchell inquired. Mitchell attempted a nervous laugh as Thomas Richardson stated slowly, "This young man has some interesting allegations about our projects. How about you explain why the costs at Sunset Valley exceeded the budget by 42%? For the first time since he had come into the office, David got up and said, "Sir, you understand how construction is. Unexpected expenses, weather changes, problems. With suppliers, is Mr. Mitchell still with you? For the last 8 weeks, I was employed at Sunset Valley. Much of the cement you had diverted to her private Oak Street construction site was carried by me." Mitchell's face became pale at once. "I have no idea what you're discussing." David turned to the billionaire, Mr. Richardson. "I can demonstrate that every penny was misappropriated. In the makeshift office at the building site, I have pictures of the trucks, license plates, delivery schedules, and even the receipts that Mr. Mitchell left behind." A chilly rage gripped Richardson as he saw the terrified expression on Mitchell's face deepen. After 15 years of trust and responsibility delegation, he was learning that someone he regarded as a brother had been systematically robbing him. "You have 30 seconds to explain to me why I shouldn't fire him right now and call the police," stated Thomas Richardson alongside Isaac. "Mr. Richardson, don't believe this kid." Mitchell exploded, her professional mask finally coming off. "He is a member of the projects to earn money. Certain folks will fabricate anything. Will you truly believe what he says instead of what she says?" The racial attack did not affect David. However, Richardson hesitated because of something he noticed in the young man's eyes. It wasn't rage. It was the icy, calculating resolve of someone who had expected just that response. Calmly, David said, "Mr. Mitchell, on one point, you're correct. I can see what people like him do when they believe no one is looking since I'm from the projects." David looked across at Richardson. Growing up in a community where every penny matters teaches you to spot when someone is squandering funds that could be helping underprivileged families. So, working 12 hours a day to pay for night school makes you more meticulous than most rich individuals. Richardson looked at Mitchell and the other man in front of her, both of whom were perspiring and stuttering as they gave conflicting explanations. And David, who tolerated racial taunts with unwavering composure. Richardson stated icily, "You're fired, Mitchell. You will be escorted to the door by security. My lawyers will contact me tomorrow morning to discuss potential criminal charges and monetary reparations." Mitchell gave Richardson a disbelieving glance before turning to David. "This is not possible. 15 years of labor, half of his projects, were built by me." Richardson pressed the intercom and corrected him. "You stole half his projects. Please, security." Threats and obscenities were yelled as Mitchell was led out. David sat quietly in his chair. Richardson saw that the young guy displayed the same silent resolve he had shown throughout the discussion. But neither triumph nor satisfaction. Richardson turned to David and said, "Let's discuss her proposal now." David inhaled deeply as he considered his sister in the hospital, hooked up to machinery. "I came here for more than just exposing corruption, Mr. Richardson. I arrived with a thorough strategy to reorganize." his charitable endeavors in a way that would save costs and actually help the local communities. Go on, Richardson urged. For the first time, showing true attention. David started by putting in place a community supervision structure. Locals are trained to oversee construction, making sure that workers and supplies adhere to predetermined standards. Secondly, direct collaborations with regional vendors, removing intermediaries who raise prices. Third, a training program that employs locals, resulting in long-term employment in the impacted communities. Richardson leaned forward, admiring the proposal's intricate organization. All of this was your own idea. For the first time, David acknowledged that he was not alone. For months, I have been working with members of my community. I received assistance with the financial forecasts from my neighbor, donor Carmen, who is a retired accountant. I received legal advice from the community college's Professor Johnson. Furthermore, journalist Marcus Silva is more than just an investigator. I grew up in the same neighborhood as him. Richardson realized at that same moment that he had not only undervalued David, but also a whole network of bright and driven individuals who had methodically banded together to fight injustices that the ruling class didn't even acknowledge existed. David wasn't just a desperate young guy leveling unfounded charges. He spoke for a whole community that had had enough of being taken advantage of and had made the wise and calculated decision to take action. Mr. Richardson, David said, pulling a thin folder from his inner jacket pocket. Everything we've discussed today is just the first phase. What's in this folder is a 5-year plan that can transform his company into the national benchmark for responsible community development. Richardson reached for the folder, but David held it back for a moment. Before you open this, David said, I need you to understand something. I'm not here because I'm his victim. I'm here because I'm someone who has chosen to turn an unjust situation into an opportunity to create something greater than any of us could build alone. Richardson opened the folder David had handed him, and his expression changed completely. The first few pages contained high-resolution photographs of Mitchell receiving envelopes of cash, financial documents showing discrepancies between materials purchased and materials delivered, and a detailed spreadsheet with dates, times, and exact amounts for each misappropriation. How did you get this? Richardson muttered, flipping through page after page of meticulously organized evidence. Mr. Richardson, I've been working in construction for 5 years, David replied calmly. But what I didn't mention is that I'm also president of the Southern Region Construction Workers Union. We represent over 3,000 workers who work on projects like his. Richardson looked up, beginning to understand the true magnitude of what he was facing. Go on. Over the past 2 years, we've received dozens of complaints about substandard materials in housing construction. Workers reporting orders to use cheaper cement, inadequate rebar, poor thermal insulation. All of these complaints came from her company's projects. David took another cell phone out of his pocket and showed him a screen with dozens of messages. We created a WhatsApp group called Community Watch. 3,000 workers documenting irregularities, photographing misappropriations, recording suspicious conversations. Everything legal. Everything within the construction sites where we work legitimately. Richardson felt his hands shaking. 3,000 people. 3,000 families who depend on these jobs, but who have grown tired of being unwitting accomplices to a system that hurts other poor families. David corrected her. And this is just the beginning. David showed him a new folder, even thicker than the last one. Mr. Richardson, Mitchell wasn't the only one. We have similar evidence on 12 other managers and engineers at her company. The corruption scheme is systemic. Why didn't you take this straight to the police? He's asked Richardson. Because the police would investigate, prosecute the guilty parties. And nothing would change structurally, replied David. In 2 years, new Mitchells would appear. The system would remain vulnerable. The communities would continue to suffer. David opened the main folder and spread out a set of architectural plans, financial projections, and professionally prepared contracts on the table. This is his real proposal, Mr. Richardson. I didn't come here just to expose problems. I came to implement permanent solutions. Richardson examined the documents, impressed by the level of detail and professionalism. Who prepared this? Carmen Rodriguez, an accountant with 30 years of experience in corporate auditing, forced into retirement at 55 due to age cuts, David said. Professor Michael Johnson, an expert in sustainable urban development, fired from the university for controversial research on gentrification. Marcus Silva, an award-winning investigative journalist who left the newspaper after they censored his reports on real estate corruption. Richardson realized that he was facing not just a determined young woman, but an organized network of highly skilled professionals who had been marginalized by the system and were now joining forces to transform it from within. And lawyer Sarah Chen, David continued, an expert in business law and community development who left an elite law firm to open a popular legal clinic. She drafted all the contracts and checked the legality of every aspect of our proposal. David took a final document out of his pocket. Mr. Richardson, what I have here is a cooperation agreement already approved by the Public Prosecutor's Office. If His Excellency agrees to implement our reform program, the evidence of corruption will be used only to fire those involved and recover misappropriated funds. If he refuses, Richardson didn't need David to finish the sentence. You make everything public. This isn't blackmail, Mr. Richardson, David said respectfully. It's an opportunity to transform her company from a source of exploitation into a national model of responsible development. You can be remembered as the billionaire who chose profit over people, or as the visionary who proved that business success and social justice can coexist. Richardson studied the young man's face, looking for signs of deception or manipulation. What he found was pure determination, combined with impressive strategic vision. What exactly is his proposal? He asked. David took a deep breath, thinking of Sophia in the hospital, connected to the machines that kept her alive. First, the creation of a community oversight department within your company with its own budget and autonomy to conduct audits. Second, priority hiring of local labor for all social projects. Third, direct partnerships with certified local suppliers. Go on, said Richardson, genuinely interested. Fourth, a professional training program that transforms beneficiaries of housing projects into skilled technicians for maintenance and expansion. Fifth, the creation of a community fund financed by a percentage of project profits earmarked for education and healthcare in the beneficiary regions. Richardson quickly calculated. That would reduce our profits by 20% per individual project, David interrupted. But it would eliminate 70% of the extra costs caused by corruption, resulting in a net increase of 45% in overall profitability. The billionaire looked at the numbers in his briefcase and realized that David was absolutely correct. The math was flawless. What about her? Richardson asked softly. David swallowed hard. My proposal is to work as general coordinator of this new department for 5 years. Salary equivalent to what Mitchell was receiving, plus a share of the profits saved. With that, I can pay for Sophia's treatment and still support his family while he finishes his engineering degree. Richardson recognized the brilliant intelligence of the proposal. David wasn't asking for charity. He was offering a solution that would benefit everyone involved, creating real value rather than simply redistributing existing resources. And if I agree to all of this, Richardson said slowly, I have her guarantee that the evidence against Mitchell and the others will never become public. Mr. Richardson, David replied, you'll have something much better than our guarantee. You'll have our partnership. Carmen will become his new head of internal auditing. Professor Johnson will take over as sustainable development consultant. Marcus Silva will be his director of community communications. Sarah Chen will handle all legal matters. Richardson finally understood that this wasn't just a desperate young man asking for help. It was a proposal to merge two worlds. The capital and expertise of her company with the intelligence, determination, and community legitimacy of people who had been systematically excluded from the structures of power. How long have you been planning this? He asked. 2 years, David admitted. Since we discovered that the houses where our families live were being built with materials stolen from other projects intended for families like ours, Richardson stood up and walked to the window. Looking out at the city he had helped build, after a few minutes of reflection, he turned back to David. When can we start? David felt tears burning in his eyes, but he kept his voice steady. Tomorrow morning, Mr. Richardson, Carmen has already prepared a full audit that will identify all the misappropriations over the last 3 years. Professor Johnson has a 90-day implementation schedule, and Marcus Silva has a communication strategy that will turn this change into a milestone for the entire industry. Richardson extended his hand to David. Welcome to Richardson Industries, Mr. Santos. Let's build something our families will be proud to leave as a legacy. As they shook hands, they both knew that this handshake represented more than a business agreement. It was the beginning of a silent revolution that would prove that intelligence, preparation, and justice always win over arrogance, privilege, and exploitation. As David left the office, his cell phone rang. It was Sophia's doctor with good news about a new treatment option that had just become available. For the first time in months, David smiled, knowing that her sister would not only have the surgery, but a future in a slightly more just society. 18 months later, David Santos walked through the halls of Richardson Industries, no longer as a desperate young man, but as the youngest director in the company's history. Her sister Sophia, now 10 years old and completely cured, accompanied him on that special day, the inauguration of the first housing complex built under the new community development model. "Dovey, look at all the people," said Sophia, pointing to the hundreds of families celebrating the delivery of her new homes. While his parents were given the keys to homes constructed with high-quality materials and fairly financed, children ran around the community gardens. Richardson witnessed the incident from her workplace desk, which is now adorned with sustainability and social responsibility awards. In addition to generating record earnings, the company's transformation earned it national respect as an example of ethical development. In contrast, Thomas Mitchell was being heard in court for the third time for embezzlement. Her consultancy business had failed. The million-dollar contracts that had once ensured his lavish lifestyle had devolved into unpayable debts, and her reputation was in ruins. The man, who used to hate employees like David, suddenly made a tenth of what he used to steal each month. As a salesperson of building materials, "Mr. David," said Carmen Rodriguez, now the company's chief auditor, "the quarterly figures are in 62% savings in costs, an 80% increase in community satisfaction, and net profits 45% higher than last." "Yeah," David smiled, remembering that terrible morning when he didn't know if he would be able to save Sophia. Today, in addition to her healthy sister, he had created a system that benefited thousands of families and proved that business success and social justice were not contradictory concepts. The young man who had once been humiliated at the reception desk for looking inappropriate was now sought after by universities for lectures on social innovation. Professor Johnson had returned to higher education with a chair funded by Richardson Industries itself. Marcus Silva ran the company's communications department, turning each project into a national example of responsible development. Richardson descended to the lobby where a golden plaque had replaced the old elitist decor. David Santos Community Development Center, where intelligence and justice build the future. "You know what I've learned in these 18 months, Richardson," said to David as they watched the families celebrating that true wealth isn't how much money we can accumulate, but how many lives we can transform for the better. David nodded, thinking about how that journey had begun with despair and turned into hope for thousands of people. Every house built with quality, every family benefited fairly, every young person hired from the community represented a victory against a system that seemed impossible to change. The best revenge against those who underestimate her intelligence is not to destroy them. It is to build something so great that they realize how much she wasted by underestimating his potential. David Santos proved that preparation, strategy, and determination always win over privilege, arrogance, and prejudice. While Sophia played with other children in the complex that his brother had helped create, David understood that sometimes the greatest victories begin with the most desperate moments. If this story of overcoming adversity touched his heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories that prove that intelligence and courage can transform any injustice into an opportunity to create a better world.